On September 18th, 2024, the Federal Reserve pivoted to an easier monetary policy, basically cutting rates by 50 basis points, a move that will inevitably accelerate inflation. We haven't seen it yet, but it will come. There's this lag effect that takes place, and it takes time for it to reflect in goods and prices in the economy. Now, this decision was clearly driven by the necessity of managing the government's debt, unsustainable debt, I have to say. But while it may temporarily stabilize the situation, it doesn't address the core issue. If you're wondering why the Federal Reserve suddenly shifted to cutting rates after so long, it's because the US government must refinance its national debt every 4 to 5 years, and they can't afford the high interest payments on the previous debt, so they had to start cutting rates. It was in order to manage the unsustainable debt. So I'll tell you what you need to do and what you need to consider in order to profit and protect yourself financially. Firstly, you must understand we live in a world where almost everything is in a bubble, a trend that accelerated even faster after the 2020 pandemic and continues to inflate. Now, despite higher interest rates and quantitative tightening, inflation still stuck around, and even as they said they would get it down, it hasn't gone down. As a matter of fact, it's increased over time, fueled by massive money printing and an expanded money supply, which continues to grow. Now, with rate cuts continuing and the inevitable return to quantitative easing, which is just a fancy term for injecting liquidity, more money printing, increasing the spending, this bubble isn't shrinking. It's just growing even bigger. And one bubble can turn into an even bigger bubble, and we've seen that throughout history in the past. Now, debt is piling up, the dollar's buying power is shrinking, and inflation isn't going away. It's here and will only intensify after the next financial crisis, which has not happened yet. So, we're currently in the pre-crisis phase, where inflation is heating up again and continuing. So what's their goal? What are the central banks trying to do, or the Federal Reserve? To push rates near zero. This is clearly their goal, just like in 2008, because anything higher is unsustainable, with the national debt now surpassing $36 trillion, far outpacing GDP needed to pay for it. So even if they wanted to pay it, they can't afford it. So their last resort is to lower interest rates. But in order to get from interest rates up here to interest rates down there, they can't do it in the amount of time they have because they're locked into a corner. So in order to jump that quickly from higher interest rates to significantly lower interest rates, typically what they do throughout history is they orchestrate a crisis. So they'll likely engineer a crisis so that the US government has a perfect excuse to cut rates drastically and flood the economy with liquidity and printed money. This will inevitably skyrocket inflation and asset prices as well. They'll likely absolve themselves of responsibility by blaming the next crisis on someone else, or most likely a foreign entity, since they've built up the narrative over all these years. And they're very good at this. Now, after the manufactured crisis, and as the collapse deepens, we'll be in the second phase of this cycle, where the Federal Reserve and government will likely turn to extreme measures and monetary expansion and explosive money printing, leading to more inflation and currency debasement that will skyrocket, similar to what we saw in 2020, where they stepped in and saved the day. Now, although it might stabilize the situation temporarily and make people feel good because money flowing into the markets, into the economy, it's going to have a negative outcome in the long run. Now, the intensified debasement and inflation basically indicate that the dollar is getting closer to the end of its life cycle and will likely accelerate the US into hyperinflation if it continues, which will ultimately lead to the destruction of the US dollar.
With rising inflation, bank failures, and massive layoffs across multiple sectors, the future of the economy remains uncertain. It's no wonder the central banks have been getting prepared by stockpiling gold. At ITM Trading, we have spent over 27 years building a team of seasoned researchers and analysts who can help you prepare for any financial crisis. Our experts are ready to provide you with proven strategies to safeguard your wealth and assets in the event of an economic downturn or currency reset, which is frankly inevitable. Don't wait until it's too late. Schedule your free gold and silver strategy call by clicking on the link in the description below.
So as people are concerned and worried about a market crash, which is something that all investors think about and something I even expect at some point in the future, what we should be thinking about and concerned about is a dollar crash. If you don't own assets, you'll only get poorer. However, if you do own assets, you'll only get richer or at least keep up with real inflation. As a result, the global trust in the US dollar system will crumble and will face a full-on economic crash. That day is coming. It's not here yet, but it will come. And this will mark the end of the US dollar fiat currency system and the dawn of a new financial order, which is the new financial system that my brother and I have been warning people about and discussing for 5 years now. Additionally, true inflation is much higher than the reported 2.6%. You see, the government deliberately underreports inflation in order to justify paying Americans much less, and because it's also bad for politics to deliver real and horrible news. Over the past 30 years, they've changed the method for calculating inflation more than 20 times. But let's focus on how you can protect yourself and capitalize during this reset, which is ultimately a great wealth transfer. As inflation drives up the cost of everything, from groceries and healthcare to property taxes, food, rent, goods, and services, at the same time, it will inflate the value of assets. Asset prices will continue to increase, with some rising faster than others and some rising more than others. So, to protect your wealth and yourself financially, you need to own appreciating assets. For example, digital assets, gold, stocks, crypto, silver, art, real estate. Owning assets will serve as a real hedge against inflation and position you to benefit as the system resets and as the bubble increases into an even bigger bubble. The goal is to own assets that will transfer their value even as we move into a new financial system. Assets that will still hold their value as we move to the new system. Some assets will allow you to outperform currency debasement and get ahead financially, while others will protect you by just keeping you up with inflation. Though they won't make you rich, you'll still be breaking even and you won't be losing. It's crucial to act now. You don't want to wait too long. I know many people hesitate, believing asset prices are too high and they're waiting for a crash to buy. And I do agree, a lot of assets are overvalued. And I also do believe a crash is coming, which will be a great opportunity to take advantage of and get discount prices, kind of like a Black Friday sale. And I do believe a correction is not too far from us. Eventually, a crash will come. There's no way of knowing exactly when. So the question is, are you willing to take the risk waiting? That mindset ignores the reality of a market rigged by politicians and central bankers since 2008. So I'll tell you, inflation will persist and asset prices will continue to climb, even if the journey does include corrections and crashes, which are great times to buy, and I am expecting that to take place. But for me personally, I am going to take advantage when that opportunity arises, and I will capitalize on it. But it's not something that I'm going to sit around waiting for to happen before I get some skin in the game. And as you've seen, cryptocurrencies are exploding. And the crazy thing is, we haven't even entered 2025 yet. This is just the beginning. Altcoin season and when cryptos reach their highest values and prices are typically in the 4th year of the crypto cycle. Every crypto cycle historically has lasted for 4 years until we go back into a bear market. And we're just getting started. Once we enter 2025, going into 2025, you're going to see these crypto prices and digital assets explode. XRP is already making waves right now. A lot of other digital assets are really shocking people at the moment. And truly, this is crazy because this is just the beginning. And it's something I've made many videos on in the past. And I also discuss the market cycles so you understand where we are and where we're going. Now, here's a valuable tip. When the VIX, which is the volatility index, when that spikes significantly, it's often a strong buy signal. Market drops typically cause the VIX to rise as fear takes over. Now, a high VIX reflects maximum fear in the market, a point that frequently precedes stabilization and recovery, making it a perfect buying opportunity, as you can see. Keeping a cash reserve for emergencies or significant short-term needs is very important. You always need a small safety nest. However, don't hold excessive cash because inflation and currency debasement will eat away at it over time. Lastly, you have to remain calm during market corrections, crashes, and pullbacks. These moments always present opportunities to buy and get great discounts. So the last thing you want to do is panic sell. When the government and the Federal Reserve respond to the next financial crisis, they'll do it with monetary easing. We'll likely see a quick recovery, and that will be an ideal buying moment when the crash does happen. And they'll step in and stimulate the economy with more money printing, and that will stimulate the markets even more. Now, looking ahead, where we're going will eventually give way to a more challenging era. In my next video, I'll be discussing what comes after the phase and the economic crash that follows, which will be the new financial system, and I'll discuss all the misconceptions around it. For now, ride the wave, hold, stay in the market, and have an exit strategy. If you'd like to speak to me or my brother one-on-one, just click the link below. Don't hesitate. Get in touch with us, and we'll be happy to speak with you. Till next time.